welcome to Fearless Flight Live. Captain Ron here for this Tuesday night, June 8th. And with me again, Captain Merrick and First Officer Dieter Staudinger. We're glad to come back and bring you the show again this week. We have two missing members who are occasionally here. Diane is our resident flight attendant. She's actually in the air at this point in time. And they looked down upon her if she sits down and does the Wi-Fi and tries to join us. So she's not here. And Elaine has a nephew who's in some baseball championships. And so she was supporting that family member. So anyway, we're glad to be with you here tonight. We got another fun show for you. This is the place to go if you are afraid to fly, or if you know somebody who's afraid to fly. And when I meet three people, statistically, one of them is either afraid and the other one is usually knows somebody. So the numbers are quite high. And then we also have a lot of people who join us just to keep up with what's going on in the aviation world from a technical aspect. We like to encourage everybody to join our Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather Facebook group. You get messages from us when you are a member. You can join, and if you do join, leave a comment there. And it's a great place to both give and receive support. And as we get bigger and bigger, it's getting much more and more active there. So pardon me, I've got a little bit of a stuffy nose here, so you can probably hear that out there. This week, we're going to talk about the 101 online course briefly. This week we had some people. I thought we'd start celebrating the successes because we got enough people that are taking their first flight or first flight after working on their fear. So we'll acknowledge them. We got a couple of those this week. We've got a special guest, Debra Rodgers, who has an interesting story and has been a follower for a long time. We got a couple of questions that came in again, and we have a brief aviation news update. So next slide, if you will. Okay, a real quick poll question, and you'll see I've got a reason for this. Have you ever been in a traffic accident? Yes or no? And the next question, did you see it coming? So whether you're watching us live or the replay, we would love to hear your answer on that, and you'll see why I asked that question tonight coming up. Okay, July 10th is our next online 101 class. That's for those of you who can't get to the Phoenix area. I'm sorry, July 10th. This is the in-person class for those of you who will be in the Phoenix area. And we just had one last Saturday night. And then the next slide is the 101 online class for those of you who can't make it to the live class for whatever reason. Maybe you live too far away. You can now join us. We had our first one last Sunday with Eric and Dieter and I, and it was we thought it was pretty successful, but then we have a bias, and we really enjoyed it, and it seemed to be well received by people out there. And we'll have a replay for those of you who are waiting for the replay. We should have that out tomorrow. It's an education issue for me. I have to learn how to put the email together. I've got the video all ready to go. I just need to have a vehicle to send it out to you all. So okay.
I think we're ready for our special guest
who's sitting there.
Hi, Debra.
We commented she didn't know the dress code. She's obviously outdressed us and surrounded by pilots and co-pilots. So Debra, I really am excited. We've been talking about doing this for a long time, and you have you and I have known each other for a long time. We said we were jabbering before, at least 10, 12 years, something like that. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your story. So welcome, Deb.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. You can hear me, correct?
Yeah, we can. You're loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. I am probably the world's biggest fearful flyer. And luckily I found Ron. My kids were studying in Europe, and I had to get myself to Europe about 12 years ago. And I used to fly a lot for work, and I used to fly alone. And I used to put lipstick on during turbulence, and flying never really.
Oh, hold it. I got to. Eric, have you ever put lipstick on during turbulence?
I haven't tried, but now I wish I'd taken a straw poll with the.
Okay.
All right. I wish I'd taken a straw poll with the flight attendants to say, hey, have you guys ever tried this? If you were desperate women, to see what they would say.
We'll use that as a new standard, Debra.
Yeah.
Yeah, my colleagues used to laugh at me, and at meetings later, they would say how white knuckled they were, and here I was, with my mirror and my lipstick on. So I used to be, I almost held my hands up and went, wee, when we had turbulence. I kind of enjoyed it and expected it. And then all sorts of things started happening. I'd get into some minor issues while I was flying. I'd have a reroute, or, I'd be landing somewhere else. We had to circle a city, and my anxiety just became progressive and just accumulated and accumulated. And I'd watch news stories about accidents, and it got to the point where, and it seemed like there were more accidents back in the 80s and the late 70s. So
there actually were. There actually has been a large decrease in that.
Yeah, I remember picking up a newspaper on my way to, say, Dallas, and reading about a wind shear accident that had occurred the week before. So all this kind of informed my anxiety and fueled it. And then I had children, and I didn't fly as much as I used to. And that just made a huge ball of anxiety. So, it just was harder and harder to chop away at it the older I got. So, so I came to Ron 10, 12 years ago as a big, huge ball of anxiety, not knowing what the heck was going on with me. I didn't even think I was going to be able to go to Europe and see my children, and my poor husband, who I've been torturing for years, had to put up with me. So, I turned into someone I didn't even recognize. I was so different than what I was like in my early 20s, late 20s. And I'm textbook, because the fear started coming over me in my late 20s, which is generally when it happens, I think. When the fear of flying anxiety kind of kicks in for some reason. So
how many years, Debra, would you say there was between when you started to notice the increase until you started to say, I got to do something about this?
Yeah, probably 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
I think when I was in the really intensive parenting stage, I just didn't fly that often. Maybe there was a trip here or there, but I really didn't fly that often back then. And I think I even noticed that, I just flew last month, and I noticed that I was raring to get back on a plane. And my husband was suggesting to me, let's go take a short flight somewhere. Let's fly down to Charlotte. Let's, fly down to Washington. And we haven't done that yet. But after I got off my flights, I felt brave again. Like I didn't have that anxiety. So I think that for me anyways, the more I fly, the less anxious I am.
It's true. And last week I was talking about anticipatory anxiety, and the bark is worse than the bite, and the bite being situational anxiety. So most people have anticipatory anxiety of some sort, and it gets built up so much, and the more we ruminate over it, the bigger it becomes. But when you can actually follow through and avoid either quitting or getting off, and just get through that little bit of anxiety that you have then people realize, like you, oh my gosh, then you get the therapeutic benefit of the exposure. Otherwise you miss out on that. Yeah.
And I think knowledge is power too, because when I've talked to you over the years, Ron, you calm me down. Like, you'll give me the straight skinny on what happened with the flight from Brazil to France, the Air France, and we kind of deconstructed that. And, so I think knowledge is power too.
It is.
Because I do think the media fuels some of these accidents, and they fuel the worry, details at 11, a plane's gone down. So, I think that fuels the anxiety. And what's happened to me since then is I have gone back to school. I've become a licensed mental health counselor. So I have learned a lot about trauma. I've learned a lot about attachment disorders. And in my own life, I think that there were some issues with attachment disorders from very long ago in my childhood. And I think a lot of people who have this fear, I mean, this isn't empirical evidence or anything. There's no studies on this, but I think it has something to do with, some kind of trauma that happened early on in life. Not in all cases, but
no, but my experience is that most of the people that I work with display at least what I'll call as traumatic stress.
Yes.
So there's probably a good number of people out there that have had a traumatic event, and it's anybody that might dispute that or challenge that is because their definition of trauma is too narrow in most cases. It's something where my fear of flying definition is the perception of a life-threatening event combined with feelings of helplessness. And that doesn't have to be in an airplane. That can be, growing up. That can be mom walking out of the room, and
be on the playground when mom goes
absolutely,
and you can't find mom and you're only a year old. It can be something simple like that.
Sure, it can be your parents arguing. It can be bullying. It can be a lot of things. And flying. One of the things that I've noticed about flying is that it manifests so many of the triggers that you would relate to trauma. So it's like the mobile, right? The family system. You got you pull on it on one side, if you imagine a mobile, pull on it over here, and way over here, every other part of the mobile is affected by that, and that's the way trauma is. So,
great analogy, yeah. And I think that anticipatory anxiety, that is the worst. So if there's anyone out there suffering with that, I was just there a month ago. I was worried about my flight a month before I took it. I even joke about it with my husband. He'll say, we're leaving on May 20th. Oh, the day I'm going to die. I mean, I would say, that kind of stuff. Okay. I mean, I can almost visualize it on my tombstone. I mean, it gets really intense. Yeah. But after I've recently flown, I feel like I could get on a plane and not have any trouble at all right now.
Let me ask Dieter, do you have any questions or anything? Any comments that people are?
Yeah, I just wanted to feed back to you, Debra, that in the comments, it's not just flying that we might be anxious about, or where, it's built up, that traumatic stress that Ron was talking about, but it certainly comes out when we fly, because it's one of those, and I don't want to take Ron's thunder because you have the captain's corner, but one of those things is that we hand over control. In many cases, or at least it seems that way. And that's Ron's going to get into that a little later. Yeah. So I just wanted to feedback that a lot of people can really relate to what you're.
And coming from a psychological standpoint, when mom walks off the playground in chase of the red rubber ball, and the little one is standing there waiting for mom to come back, not really understanding where mom left to, we continue to have this deficit in us where we're unable to comfort ourselves. We're not unable to give ourselves what we need because it wasn't modeled for us. So, that's just my experience being a mental health counselor. And it isn't that mom has been abusive. It's the fact that the child doesn't have cognitive development at that stage to be able to handle that. So that's why I say that many of us have been traumatized, but not that many of us know it. Not intentionally, for sure. Being human is to experience trauma on some level.
That is so true. That is so true.
Nobody gets through childhood unscathed, I think.
So basically, your story is that you were flying okay, which describes probably 50% of the people out there that come in contact with us, or we come in contact with, and it accumulated for a lot of reasons for which you may never know why exactly, but you started to notice it. You took action and got yourself to the point where you could not only fly but go across the pond to Europe. And I think you said that you did that twice, and then you flew a number of times over there while you're in Europe as well, right?
I have flown over 100 times. I've had over 100 takeoffs and landings. So you can, I really flew a lot in my 20s, almost every other week. So, but this is what I do when I get on a plane. I count how many flights I've had. I try and find ways to calm myself down, to calm my nervous system down. Because
kind of like counting sheep.
Yeah, I count the number of flights, and then I'll think, oh, I remember I went to Bermuda. Oh, that was the time I went to Miami, and it just distracts me a little bit. Because before I get on the plane, I'm almost immobile. It's almost like, where's the wheelchair? Get me on there. I can't even do it myself. I'm so afraid. So that anticipatory stuff really stinks.
It is, and I'm seeing more and more how big the impact of that is. People, no matter what phase of flight, where they are, just even thinking about booking a flight for many people, it's the anticipation of their perception of how bad the actual anxiety is going to be, or in the moment, and of course that's greatly diminished from what their mind has built it up to be. And it just starts the ball rolling. And then once you get your biology involved, it's very difficult to reverse it. Yeah.
And I just want to make a brief little public service announcement, because I know a lot of people rely on medicine, like the benzodiazepines, and then they get on the plane and they have a cocktail. And
oh my gosh.
I just want to send out a message. Don't do that. It's either one or the other. You can't do both. Because your respiration's going to go down. You're going to be in jeopardy. So and
I'm with you. I emphasize that as well. And it says right on the bottle, do not combine with alcohol. But so many people just take it for granted that it's going to be okay. And I forget the famous case of the young lady who was having a college party. Remember that way back when
Karen Quinlan.
Karen Quinlan.
From 1,000 years ago.
And while the odds might be with you, even as it is, you just don't want to take that chance. I mean, that's the crazy thing. You get your odds. Flying is what's going to keep be the safe thing. Combining alcohol with medications is not. So
I think it's okay to have a cocktail or benzodiazepine, but never both, because that's a medical emergency in the air. And I think that many doctors, I think at the very least, they want to help their clients, but just prescribing medications, it's probably way too easy than it should be. And people, if you do that, I recommend that I hope that the doctors say, try that before you get on the plane, because nobody really knows how they're going to respond to that. And I've worked with people who have had an unexpected experience with medications, and one of the side effects of Xanax is increased anxiety. So go figure.
Ron, let me just jump in. The real trouble that I find with that, at least in my practice and my experience, is that in our mind we start then really relying on that, and we think it's helping when it's really just dulling and glossing over things, and underneath everything is still, well, I don't want to say alive and well, but definitely rumbling and tumbling. So
no, the benefit of it, the therapeutic benefit, comes from exposure. Your amygdala has to be triggered in order to change you take advantage of the neuroplasticity in your brain. So when the SSRIs operate a little bit differently, so you can't say this about them necessarily, but the benzodiazepine family, they dull the amygdala. They work directly on that, as does alcohol. And so if it's dulled down, you're not getting the psychotherapeutic benefit of the exposure. So if your goal was to get better from flying, you're going to miss the boat on that.
You're not learning. It takes away your ability to learn.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a Band-Aid solution.
Yeah. So in kind of to wind this up, Debra, what advice do you have for people out there? People that, have been feeling this way for a long time. And this week I had even just in the 2 days, I've had several people, first time coaching students, and they're all like, I don't think I can get over this. It's just overwhelming. You've been there, right?
Yeah. And you may not be able to get over it completely, but you can reduce it. Make it better so that you can get on a plane. And as we've talked about, there's no magic pills. This is all we got. All we have is tools to calm ourselves, to calm the amygdala. That's really all we have. That works, is things that we can do ourselves, self-care. I find it very helpful to share my anxiety with someone, like my husband, or, I mean, everybody in my family knows I have this. So, I'm kind of like a joke at Christmas, at the Christmas dinner table, is Deb flying anywhere? But, sharing it, I think, helps, or doing some self-help techniques. I found that one of my flights, what calmed me down was looking at pictures of celebrities boarding flights and just seeing how often they fly.
Sure.
It's just getting on a plane is second nature to them. They do it almost every day. I think there was Hoda Kotb, whatever her name is, on some show. She was flying across the country every other day for years. And just knowing that, and knowing that she was safe and nothing was going on, nothing was happening, I found that oddly comforting. So find out what it is that comforts you and just do more of it.
And you have a curiosity, which I say is essential to people overcoming their fear too. You have to be curious about you, about what causes your fear and what works. And and people like you.
What you're talking about is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and just trying to check in with yourself and understand how you're feeling. Don't ignore it. Check in. How do I feel? What's happening with me? And then try and come up with an antidote, whether it's the harmonizer or whether it's thinking about celebrities boarding flights. I don't know, but whatever it is that works. Or
trying to,
you've had.
Yeah, or trying to get Eric's jokes. So that can be
I've really restrained myself this whole time, and I'm an ex-corporate pilot, and so it's like a big high school. Everybody knows everything, and if we wouldn't get sued into oblivion, I could tell you about celebrities that would not get on an airplane for any reason ever,
plenty of
or
them.
until their agent and significant other beat them into submission, drugged them out of the airplane, slammed the door, and left. And there's several of those.
I think it was John Madden. Remember John Madden? He was
They bought him a bus.
Yeah,
they bought him the bus. Yeah,
that was the deal.
Franklin wouldn't fly anywhere.
Yeah,
and
John Madden never did the Pro Bowl in Hawaii for that reason, because he wouldn't make the flight. So anyway,
so at least getting on the plane, even periodically, is a win for us that we're able to do that.
It is.
And you think you advertised yourself, held yourself out as our biggest head case ever, but you really, I mean, that's your perception of yourself, but you're not even close to in the running. You wouldn't even make a cut.
Thank you.
All right, but thanks again for playing.
Yeah.
But see, Debra, today you take it as a compliment and you take it in stride. Years ago, it would have been a very different experience, right?
But I do feel a certain amount of shame about it, because I am a mental health therapist. I help people with anxiety every day. It's my job. So I do feel like, oh my God, if they only knew what I was like. But I tell you what happened, my flight home, that really helped me. I didn't meet the pilot, which I think is one of the tools that, Ron, you suggest. And I wish I could.
Absolutely.
But sometimes they look very busy and I don't want to bother them. But I caught a glimpse of him and he looked so capable. I don't even know what it was about his demeanor, but he just looked like he was all about safety, very capable. So I caught a glimpse of him. His name was Dean, Captain Dean. And I just had a lot of faith in him just by taking a glimpse at him. I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing, but he wasn't a voice on the loudspeaker telling me I'm flying over the Rocky Mountains. He was a real person that looked like.
And that's why we suggest meeting the pilots, because it does humanize them, and you realize you make a connection with them. You talked about social connection. You got to educate yourself. You got to learn how to distract and disrupt your thinking, and which is the way you change it. And you need to make social connections, and that's one of them. And
I wasn't able to meet him, but I found out his name and I saw him. And he looked so capable to me. He was reading charts and, just very busy. in
And you talked about checking in with yourself, and what I hear you too is manifesting a lot of paying attention to what your story is that you're telling yourself and working on changing that. So, you know, when just that's a great example. You know, you see a pilot and you told yourself that, okay, he looks human, and that in itself gave you some sense of comfort before you went forward to that. So anyway, well, I want to thank you for welcome you to stay with us. We got a couple of things here that you feel free to comment on, and we got a couple of questions here that were submitted this week. So if you want to put those up there, Dieter. First
do
of
you
all,
want to get going with the captain's corner, or that next slide in the?
I'm sorry. Go to number 12.
Okay, so just give me a
Oh
second.
gosh, no, you're right. I missed that. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I got the whole thing, Captain's Corner. Yeah.
All right, there we go.
All right. So this is why we did this. All right. This is why we did the poll question. So yeah, but in my car, that's the number one thing that people say to me, you know, when we compare how much safer you are in an airplane than you are in a car. People say, yeah, but in my car, and then the next slide says, I'm in control. I just happened to be driving over to the grocery store today, and you know, every once in a while, you're right there at least we weren't at the wrong place at the right time, and two people had come together. You know, it could have been very serious. This was a near head-on crash in the middle lane. Somebody was making a turn, somebody didn't, you know, and it's a typical thing where you have one lane blocked off and people are looking one direction but not the other, and somebody's trying to jump the lane, and that's what happened here. I was tempted, except they were both talking to the police officers at the time. I was going to go over there and ask them if either one of them had a fear of flying and bring that in our own little study. but I didn't do that. So anyway, maybe next time. And then we had some success stories here that we wanted to share with you. We had Lane Seaton. Lane went to, I'm sorry, that's number nine, Dieter. And Lane went to Hawaii. She just landed over the weekend, I believe. We had such a lovely time. I owe you a lot since you helped me get there. My fear was the size of Mount Everest, and it ended up being a speed bump. I love that. That's a great quote. And then another fella, Tom Goodbrand. Tom, I've got your flight, your Fearless Flight kit coming at you here. So don't give up on me. He said, the flight went great. I was stuck on the plane for a bit because of a dent in the cargo door that needed inspection. I used the skills from your video and listened to the harmonizer and prayed a lot. And we won't take it personally if you call on a higher power. That's just your option there. He said the flight home was easy and he fell asleep. Thanks so much for your continued help and support. Well, thanks to you, Tom, for sharing that with us. Okay. And then I got my slides out of order there. And then we want to move on to the questions here. The dent in the cargo door, Eric, what's that all about?
Well, they as Ron and I have said many times, we do a pretty thorough pre-flight of the airplane before we leave, always. And if we are flying more than one leg, we still walk around it after we've landed before we go to make sure everything's fine. And whether this was an originating flight or a second leg flown by the crew, they walk around and see something like that, a dent in the door that they're worried might have been made by a belt loader, a baggage belt loader, or some piece of equipment that's fresh. They're going to call maintenance and say, hey, is this a problem with sealing the door security, or any kind of risk, and have the mechanic render his opinion on it before they go anywhere, which is probably what happened right there. And the mechanic says, no, but it ruined the paint, and off they went.
Yeah, and they actually have calipers and micrometers to measure the depth of that, and they go to Boeing if necessary, and they say, how much can we have in a lead? It's just attention to detail that you wouldn't ever imagine. So okay,
Ron, I got a question actually, Debra, for you. Specifically, the question is, what if you remember that, what did you focus on specifically when you were flying over the Atlantic, like when you were going to Europe, and what helped you kind of to calm down during that time flying over water for such a long time?
Well, on the back of the seats, I think we flew Lufthansa. There were videos of the plane crossing the ocean, and you could actually see it, it was over Iceland and then it was over Ireland, and just watching that, checking in with that every 15, 20 minutes was helpful to me.
So they had a flight progress screen that showed you kind of where they were. Yeah. And now that's an app on almost all the airlines,
Yeah.
So you can pull it up on their,
Yeah, I found that really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And was flying longer flights, was that an issue for you ever, or was it?
Yeah.
Difficult? Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
was
Because
hard.
that's,
I
yeah,
didn't think
because
I
that's,
could do it. Yeah.
yeah, because a lot of people, it's like, the superstition comes up. Well, we made it for an hour. Why should I push my luck and go for a 2-hour flight?
Yeah.
And the airplane doesn't care how long it flies. It just keeps going.
Any flight that has a takeoff is going to be a difficult flight for me. Or
Yeah,
was it?
got it. Yeah.
That keeps it simple, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at that. And next, now we're to the questions. And the first one was from Gilbert. He said, so I was wondering if all flights overseas had screens in front of you to play movies and whatnot. How do you know? Well, how do you know? I said, well, you could call the airline and ask them, because not all are configured the same. Most of them now have gone the cheap route. They have free Wi-Fi and an app that you can now watch your own entertainment on there, and they provide some free movies and things like that. But Eric had another way of, or another tact on this, a little bit of information.
Well, the simple answer to Gilbert's question, we could have gone without elaborating, is yes. Because with the COVID, the airlines were able to make fleet decisions that would have taken years in days or weeks, and park many of their older airplanes or sell them to become freighters, that kind of thing. So they were only operating their newest generation airplanes, which is what they're generally doing now. They just kept the newest in operation, and almost all of those have some kind of seat back video and app and stuff like that. So I'd be very surprised if I got on an overwater ship and didn't have that in front of me.
Yeah, most people think it's wearing out and things like that cause the airlines to recycle their equipment. It's downturns in the economy, and it is related to maintenance, but it's the cost of maintaining them. And not unlike your car, many of us as Americans, we drive our car, until it starts to cost more to drive it than it does for a payment for a new one. And then you decide to do that. And that's what happens with the airlines. And so that's why Eric took early retirement, because the airline that he was working for just said, we got rid of your plane last night. So we're going to have to do something else. Okay. And then the last question that we had here was from Mary Mahoney Grubbs down in Texas, I believe. Or Florida. I forgot, Mary. If you're on, I got a question here for you. She was actually on a flight. I think she went down into the Caribbean somewhere, and she said this was a live text. She took advantage of me hoping that I would see it, and I did. Although a couple hours later, because it was at 2:30 in the morning our time, and she said, "I'm sitting on a Southwest plane. We can't take off because of a gas card. Now jet lay," and I think she meant wait, jet layover or jet wait, something, and I wasn't sure exactly what that was. She said, "I'm not sure what that means, but I'm scared now, and now we're about to take off." Well, without knowing specifically what the problem was, I can't make a really informed response. I can just say that sometimes when you're in foreign countries, if she was in the Caribbean down there, other countries, sometimes you pay for gas literally on a pay-as-you-go method. It wouldn't be Southwest case, but some airlines develop a reputation not paying their bills, and literally the pilots have to carry a credit card around with them. And I believe we used to carry an emergency credit card, right?
We used to, in case something, in case the company stuff, the billing and wires had got crossed, that kind of thing, and it not taken care of, so that we could take care of it on the spot in exactly that sort of scenario.
Yeah. Exactly. So I just wrote back to her. I just said, just breathe. That's the first thing. It's all good. And what do you say to yourself? Well, if you don't have anything else to say, you say, there it is again. There's that anxiety again. Acknowledging it, as Debra said, that's the first step. and you just got to own what's going on before you can get rid of it, right? You have to, before you can let go of something, you have to possess it. And so the first thing you do, or the first step, is just to acknowledge that there it is, and it'll be back again sometime, for
And
sure.
step two is there's exactly zero possibility of the pilots leaving without the required fuel amount just because there was some sort of credit card problem.
Yeah, yeah,
Especially on a Caribbean island where they would rather not leave anyway.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
not gonna leave.
Yeah. So I think we're going to leave it at that tonight, Eric. I think we're going to leave that the story with the TCAS for next week, and I'm just going to remind everybody to, if you haven't, please consider doing a 15-minute coaching call. Somebody's getting the word because my schedule is filling up, but there's still room on it. And I really want you to encourage you to do that. Please do something, just take one step forward just to figure out what the next step will be. And I'm going to throw it to you again, Debra. Any final words for anybody out there who's on the fence and for whatever reason they say, it's not going to work for me?
Well, I had a coaching session with you. I've had a couple, but the last one I had was very valuable. And knowledge is power. And, we worked out a little bit of the kinks. I was worried about certain things, and having the knowledge from a pilot was very helpful. The redundant systems, hearing about that, all very reassuring. So it's a lot like, patting yourself. It's okay. It's going to be fine. You have to do a little bit of that yourself. So
it really is. And we talked about everything from the technical aspects of flying to how you can coach your partner into
right.
supporting you.
And leading up to the flight, we want to eat nourishing food. We want what we put in our body, even what we watch on the news that we put into our brains. So avoiding, inflammatory news stories about scary topics. I mean, right before I flew last time, there was all that stuff about the UFOs or whatever they call them. So I was even worried about hitting a UFO. So, turn all that stuff off. You don't need to consume that.
Yeah. Would have been a great story. So anyway, well, I want to thank Debra again for joining us, for taking the time. I really appreciate you, Debra.
Yeah, I know.
You've become a great friend and supporter and an inspiration to people out there. Thanks to Eric again for giving up his time, and Dieter for helping to make this come together behind the scenes, and to all of you who join us, which is the main reason we do this. So until next week, this will be FearlessFlight Live.
Good night, pilot. You were wonderful. Thank you.
You bet. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay,
What's
bye.
that cat doing in an airport?
Yeah, I know.
You can't have cats in an airport.
It's an emotional support animal, Eric.
Right. You better have paperwork for that.